13, consider report from the Chair of the Financial Advisory Committee regarding their work today and a discussion of budgeting concerns. Commissioner Whitman, and we will go to about 5 minutes to 12 and we'll recess. And if we're not sure this agenda item will pick up this afternoon.
So sufficient. Well, if you need me a time, we'll come back out.
Yes, definitely.
My name is Mike Sandifer. I'm the chairman of the Financial Advisory Committee. We were appointed the 9th of June. We have been working very hard. So my history on this was coming into the Texarkana College debacle that happened 3 years ago. They lost all the money. It was a near-death experience. And Texarkana College could have died. I don't think a county can die. I don't know how the Constitution works on that. But it's amazing how you get focused when there is no money. One of the first things is we sprung into action. Judge Lacey's referred to this item 20 coming up that's going to be this magical pot of money that might show up. I wouldn't count on any magical pot of money showing up. In our very first meeting, we submitted update number 1, dated June 13th, that documented from the auditor's work papers about this $3.4 million we keep hearing about that maybe they'll magically reappear. It doesn't look to the auditors, it doesn't look to us, doesn't look like to our committee that it's going to come up, but maybe we'll learn something today on item 20 on the agenda. Some of y'all missed the next meeting we had, which was the Commissioners Court, where we submitted update number 2, and we went over budgeting issues. We looked through the budget, and it was an interesting presentation. We went through 2 or 3 years of budgets and looked at all the red flags that were in the budgets that said they were not good budgets, that they were not going to work. We came across this at Texarkana College where the budgets didn't really coincide with what was really going on, and that has definitely happened here at the county. In that report, we suggested all hands on deck for this cash crisis. That was on a Monday meeting, I think the 23rd. I heard some department heads today say, well, we didn't know this came as a shock to us. Our committee had recommended that at the budget hearings 2 days later on the 25th that this really get discussed. When I was not at that meeting, so I don't know how it went. We had a written report from a committee member that said, you know, there really was no urgency. Everybody was just kind of submitting their next year's first budget pass. And a discussion of the current year wasn't really discussed. They did cut some revenue on the current year, which means even less money was coming in. I think we showed had about $5 million has been lost out of fund balance the last 3 years. And this year, it started out with 0 cash in the budget. So if we're wondering why we're in the problem, we started the year significantly in the problem. If you remember, Pat McCoy sold some graders so we can make payroll. That was absolutely necessary. After we did our update number 3, we went over some of the budget items this year and reduced revenue that should not have been there. And right now, we are showing about a $700,000 loss in the budget this year, regardless, well, $700,000 loss if we collected every nickel that was coming in and did not spend one nickel over. We'll discuss that a little bit later. They have put me on a little time limit here.
No, let's clarify that. Let's clarify that.
Before the recess.
Yes, if you do not finish before the recess, you will be, start right up where you leave off at 1 o'clock.
The answer to some of these problems are going to be in next year's budgeting process, which is underway right now. I just got back from Austin last night. We have update number 4, the executive summary of next year's budgeting process. And we suggest that it get completed on time and that it follow the Texas law on what's included in the budget. What I notice is I've got 10 years of budgets here. In the last 10 years, not one of them complied with Texas law. We have a chance for this one upcoming to comply with the law. If it does, I think it's going to be more meaningful. I started skipping off my notes, so I'm not on there. I'm an accountant, and I don't really read minds, but I have been reading the front page of the newspapers, and I keep saying about this $3.4 million coming in, you know, denying that it's gone, anger, blaming, other people have it, and then some bargaining. You know, just put it back. If you'll just put it back, it'll all be okay. And then I'm probably going to depress you today because we need to get to acceptance. What we're going through is the 5 stages of grief. Judge Lacey's a counselor. He knows about the denial and the anger and the bargaining. And we're getting to depression. And then finally, this $3.4 million is not going to show up. It has been spent. It was already spent. It was spent before this year got here. We have been in a financial crisis for about 2 years. And it is just now coming up. And it looks like all at once. But we went through the red flags of the last 2 years of audits, the red flags of the last 2 years of budgets. And it's no surprise. I am so sorry it has happened. We just went through it at Texas County College. It's not fair for it to happen again. Every department head that spoke here was exactly right on what they said and their points. But when you are out of money, everybody's point is moot. So moving forward, so we got this $5 million that just came in. As the work we'll show you a little bit later this afternoon, it has been pre-spent. And what's going to happen is tax rates are going up $5 million next year in October. I would say next year, but I mean in 2 months. By then, most of that money is going to be gone. The taxpayer is going to write a $5 million check, and in February, that check gets paid off to the bondholder, and it's gone. And we still have no fund balance. Unless we can save some of that money, there's still no cash in the bank. Are working together, all hands on deck, getting this next budget cycle done as best as possible It's going to be important. Now, in addition to the $5 million of taxes on that payday loan type thing, tax rates can go up 8%, without a vote, without a rollback. And that will cause about $1 million, $1.2 million of extra taxes. That's the most the taxpayers will be able to pay next year, plus the $5 million, but that's different. That's already done. The $1.2 million is what's going to happen next year. It looks to us like there is about $3 million worth of problems in the budget. So Sammy Stone's $2 million figure is about right. And we can't, of course, balance anything like that in the rest of this fiscal year. And they're going to be addressing a policy a little bit later, the financial reserve policy that was passed September 10th and ignored September 13th on the proposed budget that was submitted. 3 days later, the proposed budget ignored the new policy. Policy says we're going to have our fund balance at this level. I don't know what they're going to do after lunch today on that agenda item, but that's going to be about $1 million a year of profit that the county has to make to get the fund balance from the negative position it is right now up to the $5 or $6 million that's required. A, under the policy, but B, it's just common sense for a $25 million county to have some fund balance. We can't, the captain on the Titanic could have been saying, no, there's no water coming in. There's no water coming in. We have to accept that water has been coming in. It is coming in, and it's going to come in until we plug the leak. I hate that the biggest part of the county expenses is payroll. Now, part of my update, I'm supposed to talk about our committee a little bit. We have done a whole lot of work on this budgeting. We have been working on the future. We have not been working on blaming, and I have stopped some of the blaming or wrongdoing looking that has gone on. Now, the expertise that our committee needs right now is on human resources and employee concerns. Our committee needs help. These 5 gentlemen up here are going to have trouble sitting in a public meeting discussing the merits of how does this department want to cut versus this one's going to do layoffs and this one's going to do furloughs, and what are we going to do about severance packages? Who's going to handle COBRA? We're going to have some involuntary pay cuts or voluntary pay cuts. What kind of outplacement counseling services can this county provide? We have 250 families that are greatly affected right now, all of them. Now, if some departments choose a layoff route, then they'll have fewer employees, but they'll all get the same money. But then there'll be 30 or 40, if it was the whole county, families that have now no job. We've got other compensation issues, cell phones, health care and insurance, retirement contributions. Y'all probably don't know, but your pension fund's underfunded $5 or $6 million right now. Nobody's talking about that yet. There's a train wreck coming. Anyway, we're concerned that they're going to have obstacles in trying to help maneuver through this reduction in payroll that's coming up. We're all confused on it. So our committee needs some more expertise. And it was last night actually when I got back from Austin, I have requested assistance from 3 large local organizations that have effective human resources departments. That would be my friend Chris Karam at Christus, the other Norton, Paul Norton at TISD, and then Jim Bunch at PWI. He was, I think, one of the ones that Judge Lacey was considering for my committee. He picked somebody else instead. They have a great human resources department. We need to get some of this local expertise. They're managing thousands of employees. Can they come help our committee, help them maneuver for the 250 that have just gotten devastated in some way, and we don't even know what's happening. And then we just heard that after lunch day, item 20, somebody's going to show up and it'll all be okay. Okay. It's not going to be okay. I am sorry.
All right, we need to take a break for lunch. Court will recess for now and reconvene.
It's kind of a deja vu what's been going on with Texas County College, so that's kind of where that started. As soon as we got started, this $3.4 million item came up, and we picked up the audit work papers from the external CPA audit. Those that were emailed in on Friday, June 13th, and I alerted all the commissioners and the county judge that the audit work papers seemed to indicate this $3.4 million overdraft. Over the weekend, we submitted to all the commissioners this update number 1 that went over that. We met at the courthouse on Wednesday, June 18th with my committee, with Tom Whitten, with Judge Lacey. Wednesday, June 18th. On Thursday, June 19th, Joe Dyke and I met with Judge Lacey in his office with his son, Steve Lacey, to go over some of the elements of update number 1. We were hoping to move forward and address some of the budgeting and the other issues. I have not heard from Judge Lacey since that June 20th meeting. I've not had an email or a phone call or any contact. This morning in the newspaper, I was reading the paper that he believes that this same $3.4 million of taxpayer money has been diverted to other funds, and maybe that will come back and help the county if it wasn't diverted. So let me go over our update number 1 that we submitted before. This is from the external auditors. This is not our work. This is the CPAs that have been hired to come in and do the county and gave the county a clean audit. What I will note is that September 30th, they are showing 0 cash in the general fund. How do you get 0 cash? This again is the external auditor's work papers. It'll be a little hard to see, so let's zoom in. Maybe you can turn the lights out. Okay. Why don't we turn the lights up? Okay. $3.4 million with brackets around them in the operating Bank Corp South account. Notice the year before, in 2012, when we were having the financial crisis, there was $2.6 million of overdraft per the external auditor. Now, luckily, right down a little below that is $2 million in certificates of deposit. So again, they had an overdraft in the operating bank account, and we'll go over that a little bit later. But they had some CDs to make up for it. But the overspending continued, and at $3.4 million overdraft in 2013, which is right here, there's only $1 million of CDs. So we are kind of in the ditch. The $3.4 million, okay, let's look over here. Here is the zero cash that's in the general fund. Now, there was $32 million in the capital fund. So there's plenty of money in that fund. There was $1,066,000 in the restricted funds. All of these belong to the county. There's another $5 million in agency funds, and those are money that do not belong to the county, but we're holding for others, like for inmates or for the state of Texas or for some other factors. So there's money in different accounts. In the operating bank account, there was a $2.2 million balance. There was money in the bank, but it did not belong to the general fund. So that was zero. Why is this important? Well, earlier I made the statement that I have looked at 10 years of budgets and none of them seem to comply with the law. So we are working on our update number 4 to discuss this. And there were 2 components to this. Let me zoom out a little bit. Okay. In the 10th month of the fiscal year, which is July, the county judge shall prepare a budget and submit it to the county clerk for filing. That's the proposed budget. It's not a passed budget. It's the one that starts the discussions. The proposed budget this past year was not done in July. It was done August 30th is when it was filed. The year before, it was filed on September 13th. And again, in the last 10 years, none of them were filed in July. Okay. Now, what needs to be in the budget? The budget must contain these items. This is the law. Number 1, the outstanding obligations of the county, so all the debts that are owed. B, the cash on hand to the credit of each fund. Okay, where's our money? What's in each fund when we're starting the year, when we're talking about next year? So this was last August, last September. We're considering the budget. Here's the proposed budget on August 30th. It has a chart. It has the revenue. It has a detail of the revenue for 5 pages. It has another chart. It has the expenses. And then it's got 50 pages of expenses. And then a few weeks later, they passed the approved budget after the commissioners and the judge in this court reviewed it. They changed some things, they raised some things, they lowered some things. What I wish is that if they would have complied with the law in this budget and had the cash on hand in the discussions, that $3.4 million overdraft we'd be discussing last August, last September, and not today. If the budget had complied with the law, the commissioners and the county judge might have changed their thinking to the budgets. They might have communicated with the department heads. They might have said, gosh, we have a problem. But again, think back to the audit work papers, not mine, but from the external auditor. The year before, in 2012, there was a $2.6 million overdraft, although there were some CDs that were there too. So for the last 2 years, when things have been different and the budgets had complied with the law and contained this information so that the Commissioners Court could evaluate them with the information that the law requires, like, do we have any cash? copy. I have to send it from the county treasurer. This is dated September of last year. And it's hard to see. It's got the $3.4 million overdraft. See the minus sign. They got a few other bank accounts, 20,000, 17,000, 2,000. Here's the CD. So they're not really out $3.4 million, but that the CD is not available. In other words, it's in a CD, they can't write a check on it. I believe there were 5 CDs last summer. They cashed one in June, another one in July, another one in August, the 4th one in September, and the last one, this one, was cashed in October. So they were out of CDs, but this is the information that the law requires to be in the budget that could have been evaluated. Now, is the information right? Might be a question, because we just had some discussions about whether we have the money or we don't have the money. Well, the county treasurer says we don't have the money, didn't have it here. The external auditor said we don't have the money. So if this would have been presented, it would have been talked about some more. That's all in the past. That really doesn't matter. What our update number 4 is talking about is we have a budget coming up in July. The proposed budget is due. The county judge needs to make sure that every department head has to comply with the budget because he has a deadline. They shouldn't be holding him back. I believe, I wasn't here Thursday, but some people had not submitted their department budget. So that's putting him behind the 8 ball. We cannot have that. The budget for this next year is probably the most important one we have had for a while. And so it needs to get out by July 31st, and it needs to contain the information required by the law. Now, as an example, here is Longview's budget. Gregg County, is where Longview is, and it's about the same size as ours. But here's the table of contents. It has letters, it has operations, it has all the descriptions. It's got the budget calendar. It's got all the tax data for the last 15 years. It's got more than one chart. This is a list of the employees by department for the last 5 years. This is pretty handy information. If we were trying to analyze our budget, if we had department heads said, well, I cut my people 2 years ago and I don't have money for them, I've already cut mine. In this example, that would be pretty easy to show. Talk about fringe benefits. They got a mission statement, vision, Gregg County, budget policy, accounting policies, investment policies, debt policies, capital asset, thresholds. Here's your detailed capital expenditures. We haven't even got to the budget yet. We have a wealth of information that would allow the Commissioners Court and the public to really do a good job looking at the budget. So I would submit that this type of budget should be a goal for Bowie County. This year, I think our goal is to get it done on time and include the legally required provisions, because that has not been done by anybody lately. This is not a new phenomenon. It's now important. It's really important because people are losing their jobs because of our budgeting and not knowing where we are. As part of the budget next year, revenue sources are going to be important. They're going to work on expense. To me, you indicated that there was $200,000 in current spendable revenue. Can you explain to me what that means?
I never explain what a reporter says about what
I don't disagree at all.
Sorry.
Getting on, these are Bill Cork's charts that provide a wealth of information about where we are here compared to zero money on this line. This is the cash and the fund balance. They track each other. The taxes have gone up and up and up. Our revenue has gone down and down and down. So every department head that was up here says, well, we hadn't spent our budget. I mean, we've saved money, we cut people, we hadn't even spent our budget. And they were telling the truth, probably. But since the revenue hadn't come in, there was no money in the bank. And although everybody complied with their expenditure budget, the money in the bank kept getting lower and lower and lower. This chart was very interesting. This area here is basically the net loss of this county for the last 3 years. And, you know, my finger, you know, is $5 million. So, we didn't ever lose $5 million in a year, but this is significant losses, and that is why the cash balance went overdraft. Here is zero. So here is zero, and Bill Cork indicated right here is when it went negative. How do the spending cuts that we're talking about right now impact the budget? How would I be looking at this year's budget? I mean, next year, we have to do a good job on. Here is what happens. This is their budget worksheet. And let me see if I can zoom up a little bit. That's July 10th. That was the date of the last meeting. And 77% of the year was complete. You know, we're 3/4 of the way through the year plus a few days. And so the county software calculates that amount. And over here it tells us how much our budget is and how much we have brought in so far this year. This is the revenue budget, and this is the expense budget. And if you look at on just the budgets, we have $25 million of budgeted revenue. That's what we expect to come in this year after the adjustments that have been made. We are expecting and have budgeted and have planned to spend $26 million. And so, if we did exactly what this budget said, we would lose $745,000 at the end of this year. That's what it says. Now, on the 10th, we have brought in $22 million and have spent $19.8 million, and we kind of have a $2.5 million profit. Now, an agenda item in about another hour, I think they're about to spend $2.5 million of this when they approve the payroll, when they approve the checks that are going out, when they approve the $1 million for the indigent health care that's being sent to Austin. That's going to happen within an hour or so, especially if I be quiet. So the budget is a problem, because even though we're here today, if it goes just like we expect, it's going to be here September 30th. Now, we started the year with no cash and a $475,000 fund balance. 475 minus 745 is a negative fund balance. But it gets worse. here again, I have calculated the current budget and the current budget expenses, and that's a $745,000 loss. I went through the budget line by line on the revenue side, and I have concerns of these 10 or 11 areas. The payment in lieu of taxes. I think we budgeted $225,000. We get one check a year from Austin, and William, that came in this last 10, 20 days,
That's correct, yes.
and it was 156,000 or something. There's another 80,000, 84,000 compared to the budget that we're not gonna get this year. The next one, the auto fees. Ms. Fox said we get 5% of the money that comes in. We've gotten 660,000 so far this year, is what she said here a minute ago. We budgeted her for 990,000. So y'all please go buy a car, and we'll get a little extra money, but I don't think we're gonna get to 990,000 in the next, 60 days. Inmate housing revenue, $275,000. We budgeted $450,000 this year. And only about 100,000's come in. Now we got 2 more months. So when I subtracted them, we were down, 200,000. Anyway, 275 is kind of what I predict this will be. If you add all these up, out of this $25 million, about $1 million of it is not going to come up. It's not showing up. Now, this $300,000 for the sale of fixed assets grader, that's for the grader in Kelly's budget that he may or may not sell. Now, Mike said he might sell one. And so that money, or some of that money may come in. So again, there are a couple of things to do here. Now, luckily, freedom revenue and things are over budget. We've already collected more money so far this year than we had budgeted for the entire year. So I think there's going to be another $100,000 come in on there that will be over budget. But through our calculations, with a $750,000 expected loss, minus $1 million some odd dollars that's not coming in, $126,000 of bonus money that did come in, we have a loss of $1.7 million. Is about the best that we would expect this year if we do not overspend. Now, in our last presentation, we showed where 2 motor graders were bought, and they are $474,000 in excess of the budgeted amounts. So the $26 million of the budget, if everything else comes in exactly the way it's supposed to, it's still going to be $474,000 over budget. So you take the $1.7 million of loss that I kind of expect, just on the revenue that's not going to show up, and you take a little bit of the overspending on graders, and I'm not mad at the graders. I mean, everybody knew they were buying them because they sold them last September to make payroll. The old ones, so they bought new ones back because they had to have the graders. That puts us at a $2 million loss. So that is my fear. That is our committee's fear that we have been looking at. Sammy has come up with about the same $2 million figure, and he's working on cuts on that. Now next year there'll be a chance to get some additional taxes from the citizens. First of all, the $5 million is already coming. There could be another $1 million that they can pass without permission. At Texas County College, when we had our problems and went and talked to the taxpayers, we had already cut, and changed our behavior before we ever talked to the taxpayers. We eliminated athletics. We closed a couple of departments. The leadership team took a pay cut. All the teachers started teaching 6 classes instead of 5. What else we do, James? Across the board. And they saw us taking these steps, trying to right the ship. So that's our opportunity for next year. In next year's budget, going to be the most important budget that we have. And that's why our committee is really focused on making next year's budget the best that it can be. We need to start out with it on time and legally compliant, and then have time to discuss it so that the department heads and the public and the taxpayers and our leadership up here can make it as truthful and as good as possible so that we don't have these $2 million shortfalls next year, because there is no money. That is our work so far on that agenda item. The next one is just some of my suggestions.
You need to let the chair go to the next agenda item.
Yes, sir.
Gentlemen, you have any comments that you would like to make on agenda item 13 before we move to 14? I believe somebody on the internet, did you get the last year's proposed budget off the internet?
No, I've got the one that was filed with the county clerk.
Oh, that's the one available on the internet.
Okay. I think it's right here.
I didn't see, it didn't look like there was much of an introduction to that at all. There's a couple of dozen pages of narrative ahead of our budget that I don't think you have there.
Okay, wonderful. But that was in the proposed budget. It didn't go into the approved budget. Is that right?
Oh, you're right about that.
Okay. I was just looking at long views. I mean, it contained everything. So anyway, there was.
You ought to remember who's responsible for the city budget.
Okay.
Okay? Gentlemen, any more comments? I'll do about agenda item 13, agenda item number 14. Consider a report from the chair of the Financial Advisory Committee regarding recommendations for agenda items and action resolutions. Tom Whitten? Check for the.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Before June 9th, it had been 10 years since I had been to a Commissioners Court meeting and watched how they were being run. I got the agenda packet, my email, I think Friday for this one. You get the agenda items, that y'all all picked up. But the commissioners here get, I think this time it was like 40 extra pages worth of some of the documents involved in the budget. I wanted to share with you what we do at Texarkana College, that we are able to get this board book before the board meetings. And it contains the table of contents, so it's kind of organized. And for each agenda item, it's got a background and what's expected of our board. Here's what's going on. Here's why it's on the agenda. Here's things you need to know about it. And then they got the attachments behind it. Fiscal implications. How much is it going to cost? We heard earlier today on the by-state justice, they need to buy the new boiler. What was the fiscal implication of that? We found out it was $1,400 a month. If that would have been in the blank here, this one would have cost money. And then they have administrative recommendations. So in our case, the president of our college submits to everybody the board book and has the administration recommendations on what should happen with that agenda item. He's not in charge of the voting, but he's in charge of here's what's going on. In the county, I don't know exactly who's legally able to do that. So I'm not sure that the judge or the commissioners can have a recommendation on what to do, but if Tom has an agenda item, he probably wants you to approve it. So maybe that should go in the budget book. That way everybody on the whole bench can run the meeting a little better. One thing that I did for the July 10th meeting, which was last week, is it had sent out email, background information on each of the agenda items, and this was a 3 or 4 page document, and I got a couple of thanks for that, because it really set the stage for the meeting and hopefully, helped make the meeting a little better. Agenda items, what I've noticed, we have an agenda item coming up later that we're gonna have an agenda item to collect a $10, check on the tax rollback. I wonder how we could set up a procedure at the county to, collect 20 or 30 of those checks and then submit them all at one time instead of one agenda item for each check. These are just some simplification things that could help. And then finally, my agenda item mentions action resolutions. Now, at Texas County College, when we're asked to do something, we'll pass a resolution and second it and do it just like we do here. And we try hard to word our resolutions to cover what needs to be done. I was sitting in the treasurer's office a couple of weeks ago, and they were hustling around trying to get a $5,000 check to send to the Attorney General to pay the Attorney General's statutory fee for the loan that was going to that Bowie County had approved the day before, a $5 million loan. And the treasurer was having trouble getting his $5,000 check. Now, Judge Lacey, can you explain that $5,000 check? You had a problem with it, I believe.
I'll wait till you're through the minute. We have about 12 more minutes.
All right, I'm not going to take that much.
Good.
My understanding from the treasurer was that that check had not been approved by Commissioners Court, and thus it would be wrong to send it out. And so I think the lawyer ended up paying the $5,000. He just added it to his bill because he needed it, so we can go get our money and the approval from the Attorney General. So my point in this is, if that agenda item would have said, get a $5 million loan and pay all expenses associated with it and sign the necessary documents for the loan, then there wouldn't even have been that kind of issue. So my suggestion, based on Texas County College, us trying to do the right thing in the first place without having to come back to it or revisit it or do something halfway, is there's an attorney down there that may can help make sure everything's included in the wording of some of these resolutions. The presiding officer may be able to help clarify what needs to be done so that when this board gets together and votes to a $5 million loan, that means they're going to do it all, instead of having to come back and approve each little piece of it. Right now, we're in kind of dangerous situation. Apparently, a lot of employees are about to be laid off, and some of these resolutions are not clear. We've already heard that today. And so nobody knows what to do. And so we'll wait 2 more weeks for the next Commissioners Court meeting and hope it's on the agenda properly so that we can avoid wrecking 250 families' lives like we're planning on agenda and action resolutions. So the $5,000 check, that's just an example. I just happened to be sitting there, and I could not believe that somebody was questioning whether this check was approved. It was discussed the whole meeting. The lawyer is there. I'm going to the Attorney General to get this approved. They had a loan at the Attorney General 2 years before. They had paid the statutory fee there, so it was no surprise. But yet this one was difficult. So anyway, I'll entertain any questions, or like I did have a question for you because I wanted to make sure I got that right.
Are you finished?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you may have your seat. Gentlemen, do you have any questions? Agenda item number 14. Since it was a report item, considering the reports, there's no action to be taken.